All right. Good morning. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Rhonda Underhill-Gray, and I am the program lead for a wonderful program called Beyond the Classroom and the National Score Program. So I have the best job ever at CNIB, I've got to tell you before I get started. I get to work with kids and play with Lego and puppies and all kinds of really fun stuff. So today is really exciting for me because for the next jam-packed 2 days, I get to tell you all what to do and you have to listen to me. So welcome to the 2019 Connecting the Dots Conference. And I think it's really interesting that it's called Connecting the Dots because I think about 2 years ago I did a presentation, and guess what my presentation's name was? Connecting the Dots. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Bell. For the third year, they have generously sponsored this conference, and without them, we would not be able to do these 2 days. And we do have 2 days of jam-packed activity for you all. So a little bit of housekeeping. We are in a big room, which we're referring to as the auditorium. And during the day, what will happen is for meals and keynote presentations and panels, the room will be opened. And what will happen for the workshops, which happen between 9:45 and noon, the walls will be pulled across, and this turns into 3 workshop rooms. So the good news is that we don't have to go very far to get to our workshops. Located on our to the left of me, so it would be for most of you to the right, outside is our exhibitor space, and to my right, which would be your left, is the work zone. So please take some time today to get to visit those spaces. We've had some questions about where to relieve our furry friends. If you go upstairs, back up to the escalators to registration, and on the left, I believe there is a door that takes you back outside, and there is green space on most parts of the building, around the building. If you require, we do have some sighted guide volunteers that will be happy to help you. So going back up to registration, and they can hook you up with someone to help you with that should you need it. This is a Blind Square enabled space. So by using the Blind Square app on your phone, you can connect with the beacons around the building to guide you. The other thing that I would like to remind you is that on your name tag, there is a QR code. So this is pretty exciting for me to see if I can explain it now in layman terms. All you techies, please forgive me. So with the QR code, what you do is you can scan this with your phone, the camera app on your phone, and you can exchange contact information with people for networking. So by scanning it, you share your information. Your particular Q code or name tag has your information, so you can share information that way. You can also get access to the programming for the space and what's happening over the next 2 days when you scan it with your phone. Is that clear as mud? So if you have more specific questions around that, please do ask our registration people, and we should be able to help you with that. I would like to invite you to share the conversation today on social media. Now let's see if we get this part right. So using hashtag CTDCConf 2019, and we're going to ask you to tag CNIB Ontario on Facebook and Twitter. So last year, I told you a really fun story about the first person I'm going to introduce to you, which is Angela Bonfontaine. And Angela, so I'm not going to tell you funny stories about her, but I was looking for something kind of interesting. You know all the fun facts about people? And what I would like to share with you about Angela is that she is the vice president of the CNIB Foundation Ontario, Quebec, which is part of her title, and that is a fun fact. But You know, when you hear people refer to people as Wonder Woman, and I have to tell you that Angela manages the motley crew that is the foundation staff in Ontario, Quebec, and has two very small, two young children that certainly keep her on her toes. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Angela to come to the podium.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you for not sharing any funny stories, although there are many, many out there. So, welcome to CNIB's Connecting the Dots Conference for 2019. My name is Angela Bonfanti. I'm the Vice President for the CNIB Foundation in Ontario and Quebec, and it's my absolute pleasure to be here again this year to celebrate Braille, technology, and employment, amongst other things. As many of you know, last year the CNIB Foundation launched a bold new look, a bold new brand, and a new strategic plan. This plan was based on a very rich 100-year-old history where we talked to the community and said, what's next? So we've done 100. I think we did a good job. We'd like to do more. And we were told very clearly that our job moving forward is to change what it is to be blind. Our job moving forward is to open doors and have a meaningful impact to the community that we serve. And so we listened. Bold Dreams, Bright Futures was built on the voices of those thousands of people we surveyed from across the country. We asked many things, as I said earlier, but we asked something very specific. And what they said to us was, when we asked, what do you want from life? We heard quite simply, we want all the experiences and aspects of life just as freely as anyone else. We'd also like them without barriers and restrictions, please. And of course they do. Because blindness should never be a reason to settle for less. Everyone should have an equal chance to realize their dreams, whatever they may be. Much like our strategic plan, our annual conferences aimed at bringing together community has too evolved to be better serving for the work that we have ahead and the gaps that we continue to try to fill across our society. For more than 40 years, the CNIB has hosted a variety of successful technology trade shows, conferences, and seminars across the country for Canadians who are blind or partially sighted. The Braille Conference, and I see Darlene Bogart is in the room, our fantastic volunteer, Darlene. A nice round of applause for her, that'd be wonderful. I won't say how many decades, but there's more than 4. The Braille Conference, that's something that Darlene and her team originated, which was really meant to bring together vision itinerant teachers, Braille transcribers, educators, students and parents to really ensure that we're incorporating Braille and learning about it and evolving with it. And I think that what we're dealing with today, what we're having today is the evolution of all those conferences coming into one and trying to be as meaningful as possible to our community here in Toronto and across Ontario and across Quebec. In Quebec, for example, Technovision was the largest trade show in the country, and it's completely dedicated to technology and services for people living with sight loss. Attendees was in Quebec City this year, actually. Included participants, educators, healthcare professionals, technology vendors, and community organizers. And this year, the Technovision event actually also served as our opening event for Connecting the Dots. So we launched the event with a group of employers in Quebec who have agreed to work with us as partners as part of our Come to Work program to open doors in their places of employment for people with sight loss. And so we really are evolving. We're combining these regional events to bring you the most inclusive conference, I think, that we can from coast to coast to coast, because we also had events in the West titled Connecting the Dots this year as well, which was really fantastic. So we want to boost participation in the world of work, we want to unleash the power of technology, and we want to drive achievement and equality. And this conference is one of those elements that's going to help us to achieve our dreams. So why Braille, technology, and employment? Simply put, they're connected. Braille opens the door to literacy, access to information, equality, education, and employment. It remains an essential tool to independence for people who are blind or partially sighted. But the ways people use Braille have changed over the years. Advances in technology have made Braille more available than ever before. Computer software can translate documents into Braille. And with the help of refreshable Braille displays, apps, and iPads, you can now teach Braille digitally. If you check out the ABCs of iOS workshop here today, you'll be able to see how the latest technology is actually empowering children who are blind to learn Braille. Technology has generated a new set of resources that level the playing field for people who are blind or partially sighted. When people have access to cutting-edge technology they want and need and build the skills to capitalize on this potential, they are opening doors to education, employment, and a high quality of life. When we empower people with sight loss to thrive developmentally and academically, eliminate barriers to technology, and campaign for more inclusive workspaces, we're transforming our communities into beacons of accessibility, where everyone can live, work, and play. This play is very important, as we know. So, along with a new Reimagine conference, we're thrilled to announce that for the first time ever, we're offering a unique opportunity for people to participate in our conference virtually. We're live streaming a selection of workshops, panels, and keynote presentations from Room B, and we'd really love for everyone to participate. So this is to make sure that we're eliminating barriers to whether they're transportation-related or economically related, to that people can still participate in as much of the conference as possible, despite some of the barriers that we have yet been able to remove. So I'm super excited for that. Also, new to this year's conference is the CNIB Work Zone. At the Work Zone, you'll have an opportunity to do a number of fun things, including, and that's just through the doorway to my right, yes, your left. There's a doorway and then there's a fun work zone there. So what will you be able to do there? Great question. We have professional headshots taken for your LinkedIn profile. We can help strengthen your personal brand by connecting you with an HR coach, a human resources coach, to receive feedback on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile. We gain valuable career advice from, gain valuable career advice from influential people in the recruitment industry through working with HR pros from Deloitte, HSBC, Meridian, Rogers, and more. We help to perfect your elevator pitch, and we all know how important that 20-second elevator pitch is, and practice your interviewing skills in our coaching corner. You get to meet a community of entrepreneurs, amazing people who will be offering their products, their one-of-a-kind products and goods and services. And so, this entrepreneur part of the employment program has been really fascinating to see how many people are running their own businesses and creating their own products and going out to market and creating a business for themselves. I think who we have today are some of our most inspirational entrepreneurs who are in market. But I'll tell you an interesting fact. So we've got about a 28% employment rate today is what we're looking at amongst the sight loss community alone. And of that 28%, I believe it's 1 in every 3 are actually self-employed. And we don't know really why that is. We don't know if it's because these individuals feel like potentially they've been let down a number of times, and so running their own business is their only avenue, or if it's because that they are truly they're bred entrepreneurs and they want to go out and create their own market and their own brand, or it could be a mix of both. So I think we've got some work to do to understand what the numbers are telling us and what the research is, the story that the research is painting for us. But at least we want to be able to encompass it. So if you're ready for work, whether you want to work for somebody else or work for yourself, we have a role to be a door opener. We do not have a role to wrap our arms around you and tell you exactly what to do. We're going to make sure our community gets there on their own merit, but we do have a great brand, and many of our partners are here today to help us to open those doors and guarantee an interview. And I think that's a good use of this organization's time and a good use of our donors' dollars. So, before we get started officially, I'd like to thank the vibrant group of speakers, panelists, exhibitors, presenters, and entrepreneurs who have joined us today. There are many. This will be a very full couple of days, so I encourage you to participate in as much of the sessions as possible. I'd love to thank you all for being here and for helping to keep this conference going, and for giving us your feedback, because we continue to evolve with everyone's input from year over year, and I can't wait to see what we learn from this conference that will apply to what happens in 2020, which will be a big year for CNIB. We have a very special guest here with us today. I've just spent the honor of spending about 15 minutes with our Lieutenant Governor of Ontario. The Honourable Elizabeth Dowdeswell is here with us, and it was great. I was telling her how impressed I am by the fact that she is everywhere. She does not stop, and she's putting a wonderful spotlight on Ontario and what it has to offer to the globe. And I think being here today, it really means a lot to us. The CNIB's been a patron of the Lieutenant Governor for a number of years now, and we really appreciate that opportunity to continue to have that relationship. And it's an absolute pleasure to have the Lieutenant Governor herself here with us today. So with that being said, I'd like to invite Her Honor to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all this morning. Bonjour, bonjour. I begin with an acknowledgement of the people of many Indigenous nations who have stewarded this land from time immemorial. The Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and in particular, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. You may be interested to know why I usually start remarks in that way. And for me, it's particularly because there is a real kinship between First Nations people and the Crown. That is, after all, where treaties were signed. So the relationship is inspirational and one that I like to recognize on every possible occasion. I'm also absolutely delighted to be here. This position that I currently hold is a most fascinating one because it's a platform that allows me to learn every day about who Ontarians are, and particularly to shine a light on the issues that people face in a way that's non-judgmental, non-political, but allows people to learn together. And so I appreciate very much the opportunity I have, the invitation I have to spend a few minutes with you this morning. I too use the phrase connecting the dots a lot because one of the themes that we've been working on through the Lieutenant Governor's Office is sustainability. And that really is connecting the dots between economic prosperity, social cohesion, and environmental stewardship. And it's not tackling any one of those pillars, it's really bringing it all together. And that's when you start to see really magical things happen, really positive things happen. So the name of your conference, Connecting the Dots, is a wonderful idea. And of course, it evokes not only Braille, which has been already suggested, but also the CNIB's invaluable work as you progress, as you evolve into something. 100 years is something very much to be proud of. That's a long existence, but it's even to be more proud, I think, to show that you have the capacity to evolve as technology evolves, as the workplace evolves, and as we learn more about condition itself. If we do want a world that works for everyone, we must connect the dots. It seems to me that we must connect the dots between disciplines and sectors so that we can draw on all areas of expertise and perspectives in solving the world's challenges. We must connect the dots between the theoretical and the practical and finding ways of actually translating what we learn, what we're studying, into reality that makes the world that we live in easier for each and every one. And we must connect the dots between people, which might seem very obvious or even redundant, considering how virtually interconnected we all are these days. Yet, you know, the more that we have access, particularly through social media, there are forces that are actually turning away from others, that urge us to retreat into our own little world of fear or disinformation and mistrust. And so it's a critical time to think about how we make those technologies actually work for us in a meaningful and safe way. I think from what I heard this morning, but also what I read, the CNIB Foundation is actually doing an amazing job in shattering some of the artificial divisions between us and connecting the dots between inclusive prosperity and social cohesion. My predecessor, David Onley, put it some years ago so well when he said that CNIB gives hope, self-respect, and assurance that accessibility is our right as Canadians. And I think you help society see beyond the vision loss. You help to see people as individuals with potential to be fully productive Canadian citizens. And as this is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, it's also important for me to shine a light on your efforts because the stakes are particularly high. The unemployment rate for those with sight loss is triple the Canadian general unemployment rate. And I would suspect, although it's just my gut instinct, that with an aging population, the challenge is only going to continue to grow. So this conference is a valuable opportunity to build on the incredible work that you've already done, clearly with so many experts on board, bringing together research, dialogue, instruction, and implementation. You're poised to do even greater things over the next 100 years. I know from my conversations with literally thousands of people across this country that inclusion is a real priority. By foregrounding the social and technological progress that we need to make, is so important for reasons of inclusion. Connecting the dots promises to build on that legacy and on that of CNIB itself. It was mentioned that I am an honorary patron of CNIB Foundation, and I'm a very proud honorary patron of CNIB Foundation. What does that mean? It means I get to spend some time with you. It means I get to learn about your work. It means I get to tell others about what it is that you do. And I do commit to sharing the stories behind the exciting innovations and the important advocacy work that's being shown here at this conference. I offer my warm congratulations to the organizers of today's meeting for the tireless and inspiring work of volunteers and those who work on behalf of the blind and partially sighted. And a huge thank you to everyone who's here today to engage, because part of the learning comes from simply the opportunity to be with one another and to share experiences. You know, one of the first things that I observed when I came to this position was that we're not very good about telling our stories to one another. And we have wonderful stories to tell in this province, and we don't tell them. And so I decided that I was going to appoint myself the province's chief storyteller. And everywhere I go, up and down the 401 or wherever it happens to be, I'm able to tell people about other people that I've met, other challenges that they've overcome, other solutions that they have found. And I hope to be able to do that as a result of this morning as well, because it's the kind of dialogue, I think, that is inspired by our common vulnerability, but inspired by the fact that we can really harness human ingenuity and build a more resilient world. So I look forward to all that emerges from your time here together today. And again, I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be with you. Merci and miigwech.
Thank you so very much, Your Honor. It was a pleasure to meet you and to have you with us here today. So I just need a couple of seconds here to catch up with my notes because I forgot to take them off the podium with me, which is good because that means I could pay attention. I'd now like to invite, sorry, my apology. Actually, I still would like to invite somebody new to the podium. I'd like to introduce our first keynote speakers for today, Carol Mandoka and Kenneth Friedman. I might be saying that wrong, Kenneth, my apology. Carol is a champion of the diversity and inclusion for Deloitte. In her current role at Deloitte Canada, Carol leads a special project around inclusion within the Office of the General Counsel. So without further ado, so that I don't talk too much, I'd like to invite Carol and Kenneth to the podium.
You came close. That was good. That's fine. That's fine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today, and thank you so much for that introduction.
How are you doing?
So, thank you so much. And, I wanted to start a little bit about our journey, but perhaps, Ken, do you want to introduce yourself quickly in terms of the disability?
I don't really have to. It is Fredine. That was close, very close. And I'm General Counsel at Deloitte. I also have been involved in a number of initiatives around the disability space. Back in 2012, I was appointed by the Federal Minister of Finance to chair a panel which is around the inclusion of people with disabilities in the private sector. So that was in 2012. Our report was published in 2013. And since then, I've been on a journey as a typically abled man around how we can create a better and more inclusive economy for people with disabilities, particularly in the private sector. And that led us to what we're going to talk about today, which is what we've done at Deloitte and sort of a few stories, hopefully, Your Honor, in terms of what we've experienced and what we've done. And hopefully that'll at least be a little bit interesting this morning for you.
So we wanted to start off, I guess, just highlighting our journey with the CNIB and how it really started. So about a year and a half, 2 years ago, the CNIB came up to us at a conference in Ottawa and said, would you like to be part of our internship program? And, this sparked a lot of interest in us because it talks about employment in the vision loss community, something we've never done before. And it's about building leaders and building that experience to take elsewhere. And that's kind of where we started with the CNIB, and it ventured into other projects, which have gained a lot of awareness and a lot of excitement. And today, we wanted to share with you our journey with a couple meaningful words, which I can't really get up on this PowerPoint presentation, but we'll tell them to you. Because it is 9 a.m. and we don't want to put you to sleep. So we're going to start off with these meaningful words and explain to you what they mean to Deloitte and how CNIB played a huge part in that. So the first word, which you won't see, but it's loud. And I guess to start off, Ken, what does loud mean to you?
Yeah, it's too bad the word isn't up here. We wanted to do something that was other than a cluttered slide for you today. It was just a simple word. So I don't know if somebody can help us with that from the technology end. If not, that's fine. Loud. I think that my experience around this space and inclusion in general, but particularly in the disability space, is that often we're not loud enough in terms of what we want to accomplish. And it really is both in terms of the importance of leaders. At Deloitte, I've been very loud around the need to create an inclusive Deloitte for people with disabilities. I think leaders need to be louder than they are today. And I think for me, loud means that you actually don't just support something, but you actually stand up and are very loud about supporting it. And that you take every opportunity you can whenever you speak, whenever you present, to talk about the importance of creating a more inclusive environment for people with disabilities. But you were challenged at Deloitte by me around leading this opportunity. So how do you interpret the word loud?
So when I think of loud, I think of the amount of noise this program made in our office. And to think about it, this is a pilot program, so employing someone with vision loss, it changes things. There were a lot of questions around barriers. How are we going to address the accessibility needs? What does this mean for our office? Can it be done? But then on the other side, there's also things like, a lot of interest. How can we take part? This is an amazing initiative. How can we hire more people? And it just started a lot of noise with our senior leaders as well as the managing teams in terms of how this can be done and the fact that it's happening at Deloitte in the first place. And just to highlight what Ken said, being loud is also at the executive leadership level, you need someone to be loud pushing this forward and to make a lot of noise and really to support the program. But then you also need someone who's loud within the direct team of the individual you're hiring. So having that champion on the ground, really owning that and then supporting them and making sure that they're really smoothing out the bumps in the road, that's the most important part, is being loud on the ground and making sure you see it through. So
I love that
that's
word.
What I would
that
say.
was Carol's word.
So our next word is learn. I'm so glad I have this memorized in my head. So it is learn. And this word, I think we could probably stand here and talk all day about. Just the amount that we've learned throughout this program and working with the CNIB for the last 2 years. We've learned so much from, the members of the CNIB, Wayne Henshaw, which I know you're somewhere in here. And, just to highlight something we've done, and an example is last Friday we held an Impact Day, which is a community day at Deloitte. And we hosted the CNIB members as well as some of the talent pool. And we hosted the day with the intention of how to make Deloitte proactively more accessible for people with vision loss. Because again, we need to learn, and we need to learn how to do better. And that's around, building infrastructure, technology, and even behaviors and employee experience. And around that, we were able to learn from the vision loss community itself what that actually means, getting their input and collaborating as opposed to building and designing things for them. Rather than that, we just wanted to actually hear what they have to say. So that's a big example of learning. And I think as leaders, we learn every day, and we're learning every day in terms of how we can improve. And this is something we are continuing to do. But Ken, what would you say?
Well, no, it's interesting because I was the keynote speaker down at the first Harkin conference in Washington, D.C. So I spoke about the need for businesses to understand the importance of hiring people with disabilities in the private sector, and challenged business to think differently around how we approach this. I think the thing for me at the time was that I was on the learning curve at that time. I think what we came out with was an understanding that what we learned was that there's incredible ability in disability that a lot of people just don't understand, and even people from the community, the disability community, too often look at their disability as a disability versus the fact there's a lot of ability that comes from the disability. So in this case, we haven't talked about it, but what we did was we wanted to explore the opportunity to hire people who were sight impaired or blind to join Deloitte into our talent recruiting team. The theory being that we always talk about blind recruiting, but we actually don't put it to practice in terms of actually hiring the incredible talent that exists around people who are blind, around identifying great talent. So that was the theory that we started with, and when we were approached in Ottawa around would we be interested in participating with the CNIB, that's what I had learned, was that I think there was an opportunity to explore and take some risk on that would actually result in employment which actually maximized the ability that existed if we could find the right person. What happened was CNIB was phenomenal in terms of partnering with us to identify an incredible talent. She's going to be speaking this evening. Unfortunately, I can't be here to listen to Ishma speak. She's been phenomenal. What was interesting about that was it wasn't just good enough that we had this amazing talent that was joining Deloitte. We actually also needed to go through a learning process within the talent team who had never had somebody who was sight impaired to actually work within the talent team. This was a learning for us. Everybody that was associated with bringing Ishma into Deloitte learned a lot about what we didn't know enough about as we became more inclusive for people with disabilities. That, for me, was a real observation because, for me as a leader within the firm, the requirement for me to be bold and loud around the need for us to do this really was easy for me to do. The real learnings were on the ground in terms of the human capital practice within Deloitte, our talent team, and their learning. And I think my observation around learning was that they were all in. They were absolutely ready. They needed to be presented with this. Somebody had to facilitate it. But once it was there, and some of our talent team members are here today with us, they really took it on to really learn. And that continual learning, that spiral of learning that made us get better and better and more inclusive, was something that I observed over the time that we actually went through the exercise of bringing Esma on and getting her established on our team.
Yeah. And, even just thinking about when we first started with this program, having CNIB come in to do an awareness training with our immediate staff, that was a huge learning for us because we start to understand what we don't have, that different perspective. And that really helped us kind of build that ripple effect, which is what Ken's talking about, to be inclusive leaders on the ground all the way to the top senior leader level. So.
Yeah, one other learning, which is, and we're just being honest with you, when we built our new building, I don't know if you're familiar with our building on Bay Adelaide, which is the new tower. It's quite well known for its innovative space, which is very, very open. We don't have offices, for instance. Nobody has an office, and we all free flow throughout the building, which is really cool. But what was interesting about that was when we designed that building, we actually addressed our mind to be inclusively designed. And I know that I think you're going to be talking about it later on today. But the learning there was that although we had addressed our mind to be inclusive in the design of the building, quite frankly, it wasn't good enough. It was only when we got more of an understanding, more people with disabilities within the Deloitte offices, that we understood that we had a lot of learning yet to do. And we made design changes to Deloitte building, to our space, particularly around sight impairment. And I don't know if you want to get into that now or since you don't have the slides.
So
but just because it's cool what happened in terms of the implications for everybody else within the firm, which is really neat.
Yeah, so
is
our
that
next
now we're talking about
Yeah, we're talking about it now. So our next word is change. And this is another word which we can talk about quite a bit, because when we hired someone from the talent pool into Deloitte, we had so many changes to do. It changed me, this entire program, just based on what I wasn't used to, the different perspectives that were brought in. And, there are physical changes. So, with our building, our technology, and, and then you think about behaviors and culture, everything changed. Just bringing one person in. And we talked about collaboration and how this is so important. And we really learned that through our journey. And I would say, just even referencing the building changes, so we have this amazing building at Yonge and Adelaide. It's beautiful, it's great. But, realistically, it's not completely accessible for people with vision loss. And we started to identify that after we brought someone in. And, you can be as prepared as you like to be accessible, but at the end of the day, when you bring someone in, they'll really identify where those areas for improvement are. So, for example, in our building, we have glass doors on every floor of our building. And we started to notice that it was very easy for someone who's partially sighted to walk into them. So we implemented black and white stripes at the bottom of all of the glass doors. And we started to see a huge positive impact, not only for someone with vision loss who's partially sighted, but also, a few months ago, a colleague mentioned that they're so happy we implemented these black and white stripes because on a clean day, which is, when the doors are really squeaky clean, she actually bumped into these doors. And we started to hear feedback like this, positive feedback, and about these little changes we made throughout the office. And it makes a big difference for us. We really pride ourselves on trying to do the best we can to really support our employees. And it takes a different approach to be able to really identify what is accessible for one person may not be accessible for someone else. So it's definitely a learning process, and we've made a lot of changes, even with behaviors. We've noticed that with the team that we hired somebody on, they've really become inclusive leaders. And, it's really changed them as people, and I've seen this firsthand. So there's been a lot of changes within Deloitte that have made a positive impact and really identified our gaps just hiring through the CNIB talent pool. So.
Yeah, change has been remarkable. You didn't tell them about the elevator story, because I
Oh,
love
yes.
that story.
Yeah.
That's great. What's that? Yeah, no, it's coming.
The elevator, you mean with the voice?
Yes, the voice.
Yes.
the voice.
So we, so in order to get into our elevators, there's a panel, an actual screen panel, which Anna knows because she was there last Friday, and you have to actually press the number of the floor you want to go on, and then it tells you, and then you have to, it'll show what the number of the elevator is. So we actually implemented an accessible option where you click on, the assign, and it'll actually start speaking to you. So you scan your pass, and then you click on the floor you want to go on, and then it'll start saying, please go to your right for this floor. And then throughout the elevator ride, it'll actually speak to you on every floor number, which is actually beneficial to everybody because within the elevators, everybody's speaking really loud. And sometimes, and I've done it many times, where I actually missed my floor I need to go on. And we've heard many people just hear positive feedback and they're like, why is this elevator speaking to us? And these are accessible options that we enabled after we hired Isma on, but also we started to see huge benefits of individuals reaching out saying, can I have this accessibility feature as well? So.
Yeah, I mean, it's particularly good for millennials when they're on their devices and they miss their floor. We find that productivity's gone up just by virtue of the fact that they're actually getting off on the floor they're supposed to get off on, which is wonderful. We like to keep them working. Yeah, productivity is important. I just want to talk about productivity a bit too, because we have a term, and a couple of people have asked me whether Lenore is going to be here. So anybody that knows Lenore McAdam, she's much more famous than either Carol or I. So just want you to know that we've got Lenore back in the office. She's actually working and not here today, but she says hello to those who know her. She's coined something which we call the curb cut effect around the benefits that come from hiring people with disabilities in your offices. And that means that when you create productivity improvements for people with disabilities, in fact, a lot of other people benefit by virtue of them. We call that the curb cut effect within our business, which makes you more productive. What's interesting is that what happens always, and it happened when I hired a lawyer in a wheelchair and we put in the doors, the accessible doors, which we didn't have in the older building, and the lawyer that was working with me at the time said that he actually didn't need them because he was fine opening the doors. What we found was there were a lot of other people that used the doors because they actually found it much easier to use. That's just a little example. The learning for us is that when it comes to some of the technology we've now put in place related to the changes that were required, the accommodations required, we're finding actually a lot of other people are using that technology as well, and just having it there available has made a big difference. In particular, I know there's one person that actually is losing sight, and this will make it much easier in terms of maintaining productivity for that individual because by virtue of the change that we created at Deloitte around becoming more inclusive for ISMA.
And, there was someone on the team, and I won't mention any names, but, throughout this process, they actually started to lose sight in one eye. And the person that we hired, the intern, she has been supporting her through this process, and it's something where she thought, how could this happen to me? But it also enabled us to be prepared in the sense where we're able to really accommodate them and make sure that we're supporting them as employees. So it's really important, these kind of things that happen, it sheds light on what our organizations actually have to do to make sure we're really supporting our employees. And one thing I wanted to mention, just based on accommodations, thinking about, for example, implementing Zoom text technology. It needs a license, something we didn't realize. And this is something that we learned throughout the process and we had to kind of go through in order to really support our intern, who is now a full-time employee. We revamped our entire accommodations process just based on this because we realized it wasn't extremely efficient and wasn't really addressing everyone in terms of accessibility. So that's another change where we had an aha moment and we definitely made the change that needed to happen. So our next word is open. And I guess in collaboration with the CNIB and, our journey with employment with them, I would say this has really opened up our minds in terms of the abilities of the talent pool and, just observing the amount of growth that could happen with someone who's performing well. And an example of that is the intern that we hired, who was meant to do a 4 to 6 month opportunity at Deloitte, was performing extremely well and doing an amazing job. And she was actually extended a full-time permanent opportunity at Deloitte. And this is something we were so happy to see, and it's really based on performance. She does a great job. She's really proved herself, and it was called the internship, so it's not plus, but she showed that she was doing a great job, and it has really, really opened up our minds, not only to that, but in terms of opportunity. So the opportunity to educate our internal staff and clients in terms of how to be inclusive and how to really, take it a step further at Deloitte and how we could do better. And that's really the opportunity and how I see it playing out with open.
I love the word open. For me, open means that to make this work, you need to be open and honest with each other. That there can't be a fear by the person with disabilities around not wanting to make a fuss. And I think my observation was, given that I was the executive sponsor for this, was that there were times when Ishma, again, you're going to hear from her this evening, so she'll say what she wants to say, was a little nervous around raising things around accommodations she thought would be helpful. We actually were very open with her to say, we need you to help us get better, because it's not going to happen by virtue of what we don't know. She was incredible. As she became to be more confident, she was more open and more sort of inclusive in her conversation with us around the things that we needed to do to get better. And if it hadn't been for that, I think it would have taken longer to get this to the real successful point that it is today. I actually tested her at one point on hiring a lawyer on my team, because I'm general counsel with Deloitte, and I've got 25 members on my team, and I was short a lawyer, and so I actually got her involved in terms of the hiring process around hiring a lawyer onto my team. She was phenomenal. And I tested her in the sense I wanted to understand her management of the talent recruiting process. It was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. And I think the fact that we had an open, honest relationship with her and us with her, and she allowed us to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, was critically important. I mean, I think one of the things that employers face is a fear factor. What if I get it wrong? What if I don't do something right? What if I screw up? Because you're going to screw up. It's going to happen. But you need that open, honest relationship with people that you're hiring so that you can both get better by virtue of that. And I think as Ishma gained confidence, was more open with us, I think ultimately huge success that came from that. And that was, for me, what open meant in this journey.
Definitely. And our final word, and I think important to end on, is grow. So I think this just speaks to how much we've grown as an organization, how much growth we've done with the CNIB as a partner. And I think it has changed quite a bit for us. We mentioned the changes that we've implemented and how much we've grown from that. And we still have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of growing to do. We've come a long way, but it's something that we want to continue to do and do better. But we have grown quite a bit as an organization, and we want to continue to learn and collaborate with the CNIB and the talent pool, collaborate and make sure that we're still continuing to employ people with disabilities, people with vision loss, and really learning from each other. So I would say grow is a big one, just based on where we've come with the CNIB for the last year and a half and how much we still have to do.
I've grown as a leader. I know I speak on leadership, and my view is quite simple, and that is if you're not inclusive of people with disabilities, you cannot be the best leader you can be. This is a critical part of the leadership traits that you need, particularly in this day and age that we live in. This is about inclusion and drawing out the very best in people. And that's what leaders do. Good leaders do that. And so I think for me, and by the way, this is just one element of our disability strategy at Deloitte, I think has really caused me to be a better leader. I've grown as a leader. I've become much more understanding of the uniqueness of the talent pool that exists and the huge ability that exists that maybe you otherwise as a leader would not be able to observe and be prepared to take some chance on and benefit from. This has been a huge growing experience for me. And you're right about Deloitte. I think I look at the talent team, some of whom are here today, and they're growing as talent leaders and understanding the diversity that exists in the talent pool, the uniqueness of it, and the huge value that exists by virtue of just opening your eyes and broadening your perspective around hiring. I think it's been a great growing experience for us at Deloitte.
And that's it. Thank you all so much.